Good morning, honorable participants of Innovation in Language Learning International Conference. I'm Wu Qi from National Taiwan Normal University, Department of Chinese as a Second Language. Today I'm going to present my paper named Exploring the Path of Compiling TBCL Chinese Digital Teaching Materials with Generative AI, taking ChatGPT for an example. Now let's introduce the entire paper structure. First of all, the paper itself is been separated into background questions and methods and results. The background will be focusing on the TBCL digital teaching materials absence of these such areas and the Gen AI effect on language learning and compiling teaching materials. And the question will be focusing on the artificial generated content as a digital teaching material content and the AI-powered features for digital teaching materials based on generative AI functions, and the method of IDEE framework for implementing generative AI into education, and the prompt engineering techniques for language teaching. And the results will be focusing on presenting AIGC inspected by the TMAS system developed by the National Research of Educational Academy in Taiwan. And the features will be embedded of all techniques or other digitalized platforms by using HTML techniques, and HTML known as hypertext links. And the background will be that the GPT model and the AIGC content. First of all, we know that GPT known as the basis of the transformer model, and the transformer model basis on the natural language process. And natural language process can combine with natural language understanding, natural language generation. Therefore, the ChatGPT model is able to accept other prompts from the users and generate content through reading the prompt. Therefore, while they are generating context, there are issues that we have to face into. First of all, and well-known issue shall be the hallucination phenomenon. Gen AI produces unfaithful, nonsensical content caused by its database and its complexity of the model and the input prompt. That is the issue that when we are using Gen AI into generation scenarios, that's the first and foremost issue that we may have to overcome while using Gen AI in not only language teaching, learning, but also educational purposes. Therefore, we have to talk about the structure and the principles while applying generative artificial intelligence for educational purposes. Based on Su and Yang's structure of or the principles, you can say, using generative AI in education, it contains of four important parts. Number one, identify the desired outcomes. We have to know the targeted outcomes or the target we want to achieve by using generative AI. Therefore, we can use the proper prompt and the exact prompt that we want to use. Second, determine the appropriate level of automation, because sometimes it depends whether we are handling our tasks, teaching tasks or learning tasks with generative AI. So we have to decide whether it will be fully automated or semi-automated. Next, ensure the ethical considerations, because we know that education itself is a kind of like work that related to human, that this more complexity cannot be repaired or just be replaced by generative AI. Fourth, evaluate the effectiveness, because we know that such kind of so-called ED tech or TEL, technology enhanced language learning, we have to know the effect of the tool itself. Therefore, these are the four important principles that we have to discuss while we are implementing Gen AI into the language learning scenarios. And they should be to advantages and disadvantages. Based on Abudu Alash in 2023, they have promoted advantages and disadvantages. Advantages should be personalized tutoring, automated grading, and adaptive learning. Due to Gen AI is more accessible to other individuals. They are able to do more personalized educational models and forms. However, there are disadvantages because all the Gen AI responses is based on the database. Therefore, if the database exists some certain kinds of bias, there should be a solution. They may cause a risk embedded inside of it. And also, Gen AI itself is known as a weak AI. Therefore, it is lack of cognitive abilities. Therefore, it's not able to generate content or to understand the content it's accepted and generates. Therefore, the third one should be the privacy issue because the data was so big that they are able to just crump it up and generate. However, during this process, that this might cause our data input maybe generates out for other purposes and might lead to the further issues and risks. Therefore, through discussing the principles, advantages, and disadvantages, we know that Gen AI applying to language learning or education is not a new thing. However, there are more details or more experiments that we need to put into and more to discuss. Therefore, how about the web-based digital teaching materials? Therefore, before talking about digitalized the teaching material itself, we have to talk about teaching materials. First of all, because this is a TBCL based language learning materials. Therefore, we have to discuss the relationship between the outline and the teaching materials. There are three modes between the teaching materials and the outline. When the teaching materials and the outline were somehow correlated but not fully correlated, it should be a correlated mode of relationship between the outline and the teaching materials. However, when the outline and the teaching materials were totally separated, there should be the discrete model. However, if the outline totally comes with together, fully integrated with teaching material, it should be the integrated mode. Therefore, this design of teaching material should be the integrated teaching materials. So I I propose a procedure of compiling digital teaching materials, just like the picture everyone see at the right part of the slides. We can see that based on the reference of TBCL guideline application, it provides an unit outline, and I just compile the entire teaching outline and put it into the generative AI chat room and form with a prompt engineering techniques, let the Gen AI to generate the core text for me. And after I generate the core text, I put it into the teaching material editing assistant system, let it to examine the core text itself, whether it fits my targeting teaching person. Then I'm setting for this research, I'm setting for the level of TBCL 3 and 4. And after the TEMA as system examination, the system itself, it produce a vocabulary list, and the cortex can give the Gen AI for its self-focused recognized mechanism that it is able to read a long context. Therefore, I can use further prompt engineering to let the Gen AI to generate vocabularies, activities, etc. Then all these content will be digitalized by using e-learning platform. And with several e-learning platform will be integrated into one website, through the HTML techniques. Okay, then much of talking, we are going to go into the research questions and the further details. First of all, I want to know that how can AIGC applied into compiling a Chinese web-based DTM that follows TBCL, the Chinese benchmark language? And what features can a GenAI platform offer in a self-made web-based DTM? Here's my research method. I will use the IDE framework for compiling the TM and the prompt engineering. First of all, I have to identify the input prompt for applying the RGTA to combine itself, and I have to determine which part I'm going to use GenAI for the semi-automated and fully automated. For the AIGC content, it will be semi-automated because I will generate the context from use the generative AI. However, I will do a human examination and a platform to examine its proficiency level. And however, about the features of the Gen AI to adding chatbots, it will be fully automated. However, as long as the feature is fully automated, educators' inspection will should be the ensuring the educational purpose is still required. And at last but not least, the evaluating through the TEMAS system is able to see that how the generative AI works at this AIGC fits the proficiency level. However, it's still a need for quantitative research to examine that such tool whether it works well or not well for the language teaching and learning purposes. Next, it should be the prompt engineering for compiling TMs. And there in the right part, the picture is the prompt I used for the compiling the context. Therefore, it requires 5 parts of the prompt engineering techniques based on White et al. That mentioned about the prompt engineering for the Gen AI. I will use a name and classification for telling Gen AI that you are a Chinese teacher who is teaching in America, and I will provide you with outlines. Please generate a context for me. And the context should be focusing on, it should be the intent and motivation, that the context should be focusing on the part-time job life. And you have to recognize the different vocational needs into the prompt, into the context. And the structure of the AIGC, it should be a text for textbook, and its proficiency level should be about mediate, about a TBCL 3, 4, it should be put it inside. And as for the consequence that summarizes the pros and cons of applying the pattern in the practice, it should be present in the further chat history. However, due to the length and the time I have, I cannot show, but it is important that while we are using generative AI, it is important that we check the results and revise with further questions and communications with the Gen AI. Okay, then let's see the results. Basically, we can see that the text context, based on the input prompt, we can see that I put an naming a nomination for the certain identification for the generative AI with a outline based on the RGTA was put in the middle. And at last, I put the format I want the text to be. And it generates pretty well that it is a subject about, the context subject is about a lifetime of working as a part-time job, and it should be 3 paragraph and is well design it. However, I want to know that whether it fits the proficiency level of TBCL. Therefore, I will use the TEMAS to examine whether the proficiency level fits, and also if I will use my own human inspections to make sure that all the details, the article itself, the generic article itself fits the authentic world. Therefore, after the inspection was done, the system itself will give a list of vocabulary. And however, here we can use the prompt engineering once again that I told GPT to get rid of the word frequency and so-called the level 1 and level 2 of TBCL and focusing on the level 3 and 4 proficiency level of TBCL and make the pin-in of the pronunciation and the example and explanation of the vocabulary for me. So you can see on the right side, we can see each vocabulary has its pin-in and its explanation and examples of sentences for two. Next, it should be drills. After generating vocabularies in context, I can ask ChatGPT by using its self-focused mechanism. I can ask based on all the context, all the vocabulary I generates above, please form some questions and practice drills. It should be 10 questions. 4 of them should be vocabulary selections. 4 of them should be a conversation completion. And for the last one should be a short reading with 2 questions inside. So we can see it can generate a lot of content, and I want to challenge it for using to generate activities suggestions. So therefore, I ask based on the outline I mentioned above, please generate some tasks that are based on authentic scenarios, and please tell me how to do and things that I need to take note of. Then you can see the activities have it should be 3 tasks, and it gives me more details and how to do it. Then we can see that AIGC worked pretty well. And although I didn't mention too much about the digitalized process. However, all these AIGC will be digitalized based uh, based on certain e-learning platform or EdTech platform that it can be put through the HTML to the web-based DTM. Next, we will see the AI-powered DTM features. First of all, I have to say that the AI-powered features, all of them were used based on the share chat function of ChatGPT. Therefore, it allows teachers to create a scenarios for the student. I've created 2 scenarios for the student. One of them is the dialogue, another one is the essay corrections. So the dialogue part, I'm telling that the student, because this is a context about having a part-time job. Therefore, I ask the GPT to play as an interviewer and ask the learner questions, and the learner have to give one sentence, and you will give another sentence, another questions, and the entire conversation will be continued, and it will be done in certain conditions. So this prompt engineering I have done, it becomes a default prompt for the learner to practice the entire learning process. And as for the essay review, I also tell the ChatGPT to correct errors and give brief explanations to words and some grammatical issues. Then we can see the results that it corrects the wrong words pretty well. So we can see that applying all these generative AI functions and the artificial intelligence generated content AIGC, it worked pretty well with the compiling the teaching materials. Therefore, here is a brief view of the DTM, and I also provide the DTM link in through the chat room and the paper at the reference part. As I remember, I provide a link that everyone can read through the link and try to use them by yourselves. Therefore, we can see that it's able to combine all the platforms. Here we can see are known Quizlet. Here is the Wichiwawa, and this is the ChatGPT chat. And I use the Google form for collecting grammatical or sentence creating practices. And the platform I'm using is the Gamma app, which also a platform that is AI powered for playing slideshows, websites, and documentation. Therefore, here's the conclusion discussion. We can see that AIGC as a DTM content is available to apply to DTM content in text, vocabularies, and drills. And the AI-powered features were built by using continuous chat and share chat features. And it worked really well based on the chat history I provide on my slideshows. And as for the TMAS inspection shows that it is still important for educators while we're using ChatGPT or so-called the Gen AI educational tools, it still needs further inspection, not only through platforms, but also to the educators ourselves. And the potential, we can see that AIGC for TM content, there are a lot of platforms already exist, including Lingo Teach AI and AI-powered features for Cool eBot designed from Taiwan and Lingo Write, etc. So we can see that there are already lots of development in Gen AI. However, for further uses, we still need more work on educational design than make this technology to be a good one for our language teaching and learning and educational purposes. And that's all for my presentation. Here is my reference, and thank you for your listening.